Well, good morning and welcome to the Anittel Security Solutions Ransomware Defence webinar. My name is Joel Bruce, Engineering Manager for Anittel in Queensland, and joining me today is Nigel Stewart, Advanced Threat Solutions Specialist from Cisco. Now today we're going to be talking about ransomware, how it works and how to prevent your organisation from becoming a victim. So let's take a look at what ransomware is. Now, ransomware is fundamentally, it's the automation and monetization of exploiting existing security vulnerabilities. What this actually means. For example, every time you install a Windows update on your PC, it is patching a known vulnerability. Now, attackers can exploit these vulnerabilities, which allows them to run malicious software, which is where the term malware comes from, on your computer. Now, in the case of ransomware, the goal is to run malware that encrypts your files and demands a payment in exchange for the key to decrypt it. Now, the attack will have a payment system set up, and they usually use something like Bitcoin due to the anonymous nature of these digital currencies. The small medium businesses have been among the hardest hit, with around 40% reporting some ransomware effect across 2016. And typically, small medium business do not have the resources for dedicated security staff or enterprise security controls. Now, that's not to say that only SMB have been targeted. Much larger organisations have also been affected. Now, this is a really widespread problem. In terms of the cost, a typical ransom demand ranges from around $400 to about $1,500, but some demands of over $50,000 have also been reported, and the average demand has gone up from around $400 in 2016 to over $1,000 in 2017. But the real cost is around the disruption of operations, the loss of productivity, and importantly, the loss of data. Now, one of the statistics is that ransom costs are paid in less than 10% of cases. But as you can see on the screen, in 20% of those who pay the ransom, they still don't get their data back. Nigel, Cisco is an industry leader in threat intelligence and security research. What are some of the ransomware trends that you've observed across 2017?
Or not Petya. Many organisations were crippled by WannaCry in particular, which could have been avoided by a simple process of patching. But as many of you are probably aware, keeping up with patching can be tough. I often, put an analogy in there around going to the doctor. We go to the doctor says, you're a little bit overweight, your heart rate's up, you need to go on a diet, you need to exercise more, you need to stop drinking alcohol. So we all understand what we have to do, but when we leave the doctor, we tend not to do it. And that's probably pretty similar with most people. I'm sure many people on the call have trouble doing the basic housekeeping and keeping up with patching. So the other interesting thing about those attacks, or WannaCry in particular, I mean, if we look at the scenarios, Microsoft provided a patch in March for the vulnerability that was exploited. Now, the exploit didn't take place until May. So you had about 3 months, a 3-month window to get that housekeeping done, but still many people didn't do it. Over and above that, Cisco did provide network-based patches. So on our firewalls, for example, we update the signature set. So any customer using our firewall, again, was protected at the network layer against an attack on those vulnerabilities. In addition to that, we have another couple of solutions which we'll talk about a little bit more later, Umbrella and also AMP Endpoint, which could have prevented the outbreak as well. So if you think about it, anyone that got hit really has themselves to blame. Does that sound a bit harsh?
That sounds really tough, Nigel.
Anyway, the other thing that I think is scary here is that whilst ransomware advertises itself because it wants to receive payment, right? So yes, we should be concerned about that, but what we should be more concerned about is probably the malware in our environment that's not advertising itself. And it could well be existing, stealing credentials, accessing confidential information, and we don't even know about it. So if you have been hit by ransomware in the past, you really should start looking a bit deeper in your environment and see if there's any other, nasties under the covers. The other major attack that took place was Netya. Now, this is a classic example because it was a campaign that masqueraded as ransomware. but it wasn't really ransomware because the payment infrastructure was set up, but it wasn't really capable of taking bulk payments. So what it actually was doing was credential stealing and disk wiping. So it was a pretty nasty attack, masquerading as malware, but not necessarily malware. So as I mentioned before, it really does pay to look beneath the covers and see if there are any hidden nasties. Joel.
So Nigel, it's pretty safe to say there's a high threat level at the moment. There's a lot of ransomware we're seeing out in the wild, and these larger ones have got a lot of publicity, and I saw them on Sunrise the other day as well. And you're right, exactly. Ransomware's in your face. It's obvious when you get hit, but there's potentially a lot of other things happening in the background that you might not know about. The stats that we saw on the last page tell a bit of a story too. So there's a lot of attacks happening, and many of them have been successful. And the result of that is a bit of downtime, but still not many victims are paying the ransom. So what that means is the backup systems are generally sufficient. Businesses will restore data. They'll get back online. They might be down for a couple of days, which is great to see. So successful backups. But look, it's much more effective to prevent an attack from happening in the first place rather than trying to clean up the mess afterwards.
Absolutely.
So we're going to focus today on preventing the attack as early as possible. And what that means is targeting these primary infection vectors. So we can see from the slide up now that email and web attacks represent over 80% of successful ransomware attacks. So Nigel, let's take a bit of a look at the chain of events that leads to a successful attack.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Look, the ransomware kill chain, I don't know if anyone on the call has sort of heard that term before, attack chain or kill chain, but I think it's really important to understand. It's not that difficult, and we really need to take a look at it because, essentially there's an attack vector, there's a malicious payload, and there's a target, which is essentially an endpoint or a server which contains information that people are wanting to either encrypt or steal. So let's try and follow the path. When we get hit by ransomware or any malware, we typically react to where we got hit. An analogy for that might be like, hey Joel, if you punch me in the head, I might choose to put on a helmet, right? But I've reacted to the exploit instead of addressing the bigger threat, which is probably your fist. So we need to look deeper into what's going on. So in business terms, for example, if a database server gets encrypted, we might try and beef up our database security and or our server security. Now, whilst this is a good thing to do, we must really look more broadly and understand where the attack came from, what process it executed, and how it delivered the payload. That's what we refer to as a kill chain. So the first thing we think is, where did it enter? Possibly via email. As Joel mentioned on the previous slide, email is a very high percentage of where the attack vectors come from. The other component is a term we use as malvertising. Malvertising is essentially when you go to a website, you might be on a retail website doing some shopping, or you might be ordering your Coles groceries, and there'll be a little pop-up or a little ad stuck on the side that catches your eye and you click on it. Now, a lot of them are legitimate and there's no issue with them, but some of them may be malicious and they may then redirect your browser to a malicious website, which is called malvertising. So once you've clicked on a malicious link, for example, it will then, the malware makes its way inside your environment and it will actually drop a file and run. Now that file will then want to call back to a master server. So this process we call command and control. Often in the IT world, we abbreviate it with C2, command times 2, command and control. So basically then this piece of malware will reach out and it will try and pull down the malicious code, and then, if it's successful, it will start encrypting your machine. So once encrypted, you're going to be asked for the ransomware payment, and then, damn, it's too late. So if you look at the kill chain, it's a matter of where in the kill chain can we stop this attack, and it's going to be in multiple layers. You've got to look at the email security, you've got to look at the web security, you've got to look at another layer to stop command and control. We'll talk about how we can do that later. And also endpoint is your last line of defense. You really need to beef up your endpoint. So in essence, Joel, what I'm saying is unfortunately, there's no silver bullet. Right? We must really deploy a number of detection points and protection across the whole kill chain, and that's the whole thing that we're trying to get across to your customers today. Is what you're offering is exactly that. So over to you for some email-based infection discussion.
Yeah, so we saw that email is still the most common way that ransomware and malware gets into a business. And I'm sure everyone on the call can remember an example of a malicious email. They use a variety of techniques, but ultimately the email itself will be crafted to sound urgent or enticing to the end user. And there'll be a call to action in there. So they click on this attachment to get your Origin Energy invoice, or go to this link to find out to reset your Apple ID password. Someone's trying to hack your Apple ID. The malicious link, of course, it doesn't go to the domain that the user's expecting. So that goes off to the attacker's infrastructure, and they'll try and deliver what they call an exploit kit. So the exploit kit is designed to attack any vulnerability in a web browser or an email system. So if you're using Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Internet Explorer, and you've got the plugins Silverlight, Flash, Adobe Reader, or Java installed, if any one of those are out of date or have a vulnerability, then they'll try and exploit all of them all at once, which is really damaging and really dangerous. Yeah. As you mentioned earlier, Nigel, it's pretty hard to keep all of your patches up to date, and I'm sure all of us have ignored that. Oh, you have an Adobe Reader update pop up that pops up in the system tray of your machine.
Exactly.
If the payload's an attachment, it's got the code in it to run that exploit locally, and that usually takes the form of a PDF file or a macro-enabled Office document. Now, Nigel, a lot of these attacks start out as spam, and they use many of the same techniques. So can we have a look about how spam has gone from just a nuisance, I'm not trying to buy a fake Rolex, to an actual security threat?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some statistics here that we're sharing with you, and this has been gathered through Cisco's email security infrastructure. We see about a third of the world's email. We process every day 600 billion emails a day, which is a huge amount of email. So we did some statistics back in 2016, and you'll notice here in January 2016, the percentage of ransomware in spam was 18%. So, while that's troublesome, it's not a huge amount, but as we moved through that year of 2016, we now see an increase in November timeframe. It's now 66%. So of all the spam that's hitting your email server, 66% of that is ransomware, and then a lot of that actual ransomware will then contain malicious software, so attachments. So spam and email security is a primary thing that we need to address.
So I've done incident response for some ransomware cleanups, Nigel, and one of the things that we've come across, you do the analysis and you do the deep dive, how did it get into the organisation? And in a few incidents, it's been an email attack delivered through Office 365. And I know a lot of customers are using Office 365, and for good reason. It's a fantastic productivity suite. A lot of business benefits to it. But look, the email security part of it is sometimes mixed performance results. I read a report from Gartner recently, and they reported similar feedback from their customers. I noticed Cisco was listed as a leader in the same report. But the good thing about Office 365 is that you can extend the security. They've built the product to be extensible, and they actually have their own advanced threat protection as well that you can add on to Office 365 to provide superior protection. What we've done at Anittel is we've gone out to the market. We've had a look at all of the vendors that are available on the market and run some testing against all of them. And we validated that with industry reports as well, such as Gartner. And so for the Anittel Protect and Assure pack, we include Cisco Cloud Email Security. I noticed one of the concerns that Gartner had about the Cisco Cloud Security is it's not scalable for small business. So the way we've packaged that up for Anittel customers is it absolutely is. So for example, I use on my own domain one mailbox, one Office 365 mailbox, and it's perfectly fit for purpose. It's delivered in the cloud. all of the filtering, all of the processing happens in the cloud, and it scales from like one mailbox through to 100,000. Not a problem at all. That's the cloud scale. So Nigel, we'll do a bit of a look at how the Cisco Mail Security Package works, and go over some of the features.
Okay, thanks, Joel. Look, I'm glad you've validated through third parties that we are a leader in the security email in particular, which is great. Email again is your first line of defence, so it's really essential, extremely important to block as much as you can at that first point. So the more spam you reduce, the more malicious attachments that you can stop will certainly reduce your risk. And security really is just about reducing risk, right? Nothing's fail-safe, but you want to reduce the risk as much as you can. So as a result, Cisco Email Security or Cloud Email Security delivered by Anittel should really significantly reduce your exposure to what we call the three main components of an email attack. And that's the malicious attachments, the malicious URLs, and malicious content, which can be embedded in emails. Now, again, we believe Cisco Email Security is best in class. Joel's sort of done his research and validated that, so very happy to hear that. I mentioned before we process on average over 600 billion emails a day, a third of the world's email traffic. So that's huge, right? This provides small and medium business access to what we would say is enterprise-grade security. So, any customer listening today, regardless of your size, you can leverage the same solution, for example, that a large bank would be using in their environment. So it's fit for purpose. It can be, as Joel gave his example, it can be molded to any level of business that you may have. So attachments, URLs, and email content are three key things that we need to protect. Now, just to give you a little bit more information around Cisco Email Security, how it works, if we look at this slide, there's four main components that we highlight. There's more than just this, but these are the four main components: anti-spam, antivirus, virus outbreak filters, and advanced malware protection. Now, anti-spam and antivirus is pretty common, and most basic email security providers will provide that. It's just arguably who does it better than the others, but it is the base level of protection. I think where Cisco differentiates is the additional two components: the virus outbreak filters and the advanced malware protection. So, a virus outbreak filter, for those who may not have heard it, it basically leverages global patterns of attack traffic. And then it's immediately updating our database and providing the fastest possible protection for anybody, no matter where you are in the world. So if we see things happening in Europe or the US or China, it's shared across our global database, and any person subscribing gets immediate benefit. The other key one that I really love, Joel, this is one of my my favourite babies, advanced malware protection. It's really what we call critical file-based malware detection that convicts malicious attachments. Now, I'll give you an example, a real-world example of a customer we worked with. So we had a customer where we were doing email security, managed email security service, and we did a 3-month proof of concept with this customer. Now, over that 3 months, we tracked how many malicious attachments were caught by the antivirus engine, and it was roughly 25,000. Then we also tracked, over and above that, the files that the antivirus engine did not know about, but AMP picked up how many additional files were that. Well, it was another almost 25,000 on top. So it basically doubled the catch rate. So adding advanced malware protection to email security, which is what Anittel are offering their customers, will double the catch rate and hence reduce your risk, markedly. So really, really compelling. The other factor we tracked here in this proof of concept was we looked at when the advanced malware engine convicted a file, let's say it was January the 1st, how long did it take before that signature for that file was available on VirusTotal? Now, for those customers who may or might know, but VirusTotal is an area where you can go and look at all the base antivirus vendors share their threat protection status up there. So they say, yes, we have coverage for this particular threat. So if we found the threat on January the 1st, we then checked when a virus vendor had it available. And we found that the delta was between 2 to 85 days with an average of 29. So what I'm saying there is essentially if you put advanced malware, which you're being offered by Anittel, you're putting that on your email, you're 29 days ahead of the game when it comes to base AV vendors. So it's a significant advantage in email protection.
And it's really about detecting the unknown more so than the known, and that's what an antivirus vendor will pick up what's a known attack, and it's those unknown attacks. It's those attacks that are generated really quickly, they live for a few hours, and then they're gone forever.
Oh,
and it's those sorts of attacks that, in our testing, where AMP really stood out from the pack.
Yeah, it's that sort of zero-day protection that you're getting. So let's move over to web, Joel.
Yeah, okay. So web attacks can originate from, as we've seen, a malicious link delivered to an end user through email and commonly social media. But a common way to get infected is by visiting a legitimate website that's been infected with an exploit kit. And even really popular websites can be compromised. So a recent example of that is a web-based attack that happened to Gumtree users last year. A completely unrelated legal firm in Sydney was hacked, and the attacker set up shop in their business and started impersonating them. And what they did, it was really quite sneaky. They went out to the advertising networks and started trying to buy ad space on popular websites. So they actually got one of their ads on Gumtree's website. And if you flick over, Nigel, just have a look at the sort of ad that we're talking about.
Oh, just a sec.
Oh, technology.
Bear with me.
So you'll see in the middle of the screen there's a banner ad for IHG. In this case, it would have been there's a legal firm that wants you to buy their legal services. And for most users, that's exactly what they saw. But for a certain percentage of users, they served up an exploit kit, and it just happened to be the Angler exploit kit, similar to what we talked about earlier, where they'll just attack every browser, every known plugin, and if any one of those is out of date, hey, guess what? You've got either a ransomware or a banking Trojan in this instance. So we'll have a look at the Gumtree website as an example. We're picking on Gumtree, but in this case, it actually wasn't their fault. And it ties into how we do web protection. So you'll see a statistic there in the middle of the page. This is an analysis of Gumtree's homepage, and you'll see it's calling data from 30 different domains and 50 different subdomains. It's blocking 137 ads, and it's those domains that in most instances they're perfectly fine. And Gumtree's a popular website. It's perfectly safe 90% of the time, except for this instance. So it's these domains and these subdomains, which is where the malicious traffic can come from, and that's what we're going to take a look at with how we do web filtering. So for the web filtering part of the Protect and Assure pack, we've again selected a Cisco product, Cisco Umbrella. Now that works a bit differently to a typical corporate web filter, in that it uses DNS to protect the user traffic. A DNS, it's one of the foundational components of the internet. It's not used just in web browsers, it's used by every device on the network. Every port, protocol, application, everything starts with a DNS request. So you could say before a malicious file is downloaded, before a connection's made, before you're trying to download that ad, you're doing a DNS request. So Nigel, let's cover off a bit about how DNS and how Umbrella fits into the infrastructure.
Yeah, look, this is pretty exciting. It's an amazing technology. Cisco acquired a company called OpenDNS about 2 years ago, and there may be customers listening that use the free home version. There's actually a free home version of OpenDNS that you can download and use, so I encourage anyone on the call to download that and just use some basic protection for your machines at home. If you've got teenage children, you might want to download it and just see what's going on. So great product. Now, if we look at how it works, as Joel mentioned, right, every person that connects to the internet, whether they're reading the news or playing games or going to their favorite sports site, whatever it might be, they use DNS, even if you don't know you're using it. So here, in this particular slide, on the bottom left-hand side, you'll note that all of that is the typical on-premise type solutions that we've put in place. We've put in endpoint security or network security, firewalls, web proxies, different types of solution. Now, we must continue to do that. There's not any reason that you wouldn't do that. But what Umbrella gives you is what we call this first line of defense over and above any basic deployment that you might have on premise. So anytime somebody makes a DNS call, it could be going out to a domain, and this will give you protection against malicious domains that host malware. It'll protect you against phishing attacks, and we mentioned earlier that command and control activity that it can block. So if a piece of malware drops onto your machine and tries to go out and connect to a malicious site, we can protect you there. So again, multiple layers of defense. And one of the key things I really like about Umbrella as well is that it's what we call port and protocol agnostic. Now, if you put a typical firewall in place, firewall is very much about port and protocol protection. Whereas here we don't care about that, we're just looking at DNS traffic. So as you're surfing the internet, you should feel free that you're actually protected. Now, additionally, when we look at what we're seeing, 15% of command and control activity bypasses web ports 80 and 443. So as I mentioned before, your firewall would be blind to these sorts of attacks. So DNS will help you in that respect. Statistics also show that 91% of command and control can be blocked at the DNS layer. So you're getting a huge level of protection before it even touches anything else that you've deployed in the environment. So one more thing around DNS, why should we care? I often get asked about why can't I just put DNS security on my firewall, for example? Well, my response is usually, yeah, sure, you can put DNS security on a firewall, but this is often it's referred to as sinkholing, and it's essentially a blacklist. But can that keep up with the common cyber criminal attacks? So let's consider, up on this page here, I've got some statistics around a campaign that was called Angler, the Angler exploit. Now, this was a huge campaign, and Cisco were involved through our Talos organisation in taking this down. Talos, by the way, is a security research department that's dedicated to reverse engineering malware and providing best-in-class, threat intelligence and defence. Essentially, consider a large group of geeks locked in a back room, reverse engineering malware, analysing global threat information, but they're there to protect us. But the key consideration of Angler was what we call DGA, Domain Generation Algorithm. Now, a DGA, commonly used by criminals, what it can do is it stands up hundreds of domains in a matter of seconds. Now, to counter this, you need a sophisticated back-end intelligence system such as Cisco Umbrella. A basic, DNS sinkhole approach on your firewall will just not keep pace with that sort of pressure. So definitely, you need to consider Umbrella as a key component in your security against ransomware. So, Joel, as we move through here, we then talk about the target. We talk about endpoint. What's your thought on endpoint protection, for example?
Absolutely critical, Nigel. So that's the third part of our Protect and Assure pack. Because as we can see, every attack that happens, it's either happens on an endpoint or it's headed there. So an endpoint might be a PC or a laptop, or often it's a high-value target like a server. That's where the encryption process runs. That's where the attack actually happens. It's all about getting that software, that malware onto your endpoint. So we've included there's an endpoint protection package in our Protect and Assure pack. It's a next-gen product. It's designed again to protect against the known and the unknown attacks, and it's those unknown attacks that are the key. So it uses it's got a feature called CryptoGuard. And the way that works, it detects behaviour like that spontaneous encryption activity. That's a feature of all ransomware. It's designed specifically to target that. It blocks the process and provides a root cause analysis. So it provides all of the details: what happened, what files did it touch, what other modules did it call, and who did it talk to. And so you can see that this is all of the components tied together. So we block traffic, block malicious attachments and links from hitting the user's inbox in the first place. And so that's really key to prevent that attack from even being visible. We block malvertising and malicious links delivered via the web, including social media. We block traffic to domains that host those exploit kits, and it blocks the access to that command and control infrastructure that's used by ransomware. And in the end, if it's still able to bypass those levels of protection, it's picked up by the endpoint protection, and that activity is monitored and picked up there. A key part of all this is the threat intelligence. As Nigel's mentioned, all of this technology is no good if there's if we're missing domains, if we're missing specific targets, and that's one of the things that in doing the testing and putting together this pack, we did a lot of research, and the Cisco Talos research organisation is one of the best threat intelligence databases that we've come across. And so, Nigel, you want to give us a quick rundown on Cisco Talos?
Yeah, look, just briefly, I did mention it before. It is our security research team, super smart guys that reverse engineer malware, analyse global threat information, and provide us not only intelligence, but the context around threat intelligence. Really, this is the secret sauce in the back end that helps us provide, enterprise-class security. And hence, you're leveraging that, and every customer on the call will be able to leverage that. From the slide you see here that we see a massive amount of threat-related data that puts us in a great position to actually provide that threat protection for customers. Our Talos team also, Joel, they actively get involved and bring down major cyber criminal networks, such as I mentioned the Angler campaign. We were involved in bringing that down, and this often involves partnering with the FBI and other international agencies. So these guys are really on the front line when it comes to cyber criminal defence. So what's next, Joel?
So there's a few things that we're seeing in ransomware today and expecting it to continue to occur because it's being so effective. The number one is credential theft, and that was seen in that latest Nectar attack. And that's used, so if you gain valid credentials for a user, there's a high possibility that they'll be used in another system. So if you've got unfortunately, a lot of people use the same username and password combination across multiple platforms. So if you get access to one, you get access to all of them. So that's quite dangerous. But it can also be used to launch a more targeted, more destructive attack. And similarly with brute force attacks, they're after your credentials. So what the attackers will do is they'll sit there, they'll see someone's remote access system, and they'll go, okay, great, I'm going to try a whole heap of different usernames and passwords on that system. And they'll just keep there logging in thousands of times a second, generic user accounts, office and admin and try all of these username and password combinations. And the whole idea is once they get into a network, they can look around, they can spend a bit of time, they can identify, the high value targets. There's your financial server database, there's your mail server. Okay, there are your backups, and that's a really key one. And insider threats is another one that's actually pretty scary. So ransomware as a service is now a thing. A disgruntled employee can go out on the web and buy a ransomware package. They know where the business's vulnerabilities are. They know where the backup systems are. They know where the high value targets are. They can deploy that ransomware inside their own business and collect a clip of the ransom. And that's where it's suspected that those really high value ransoms, the $50,000 plus. They know how much a business will pay because they're inside the business. So that's quite scary.
Yeah, the insider threat's often overlooked, I think, isn't it? Often overlooked.
But in general security terms, there's a few things that you can do over and above here to protect your business. So we know that no single product or even a suite of products is complete protection, and most of the security is just good maintenance routines. So that patching is really important. And Nigel mentioned earlier about the WannaCry. So when that first hit news headlines around the world, it was late on a Friday night in Australia. And I was working with our guys in the systems team to look at the patch health of all of our customers. And one of the things that we came out with is over 96% patch compliance, which is a really fantastic result. So WannaCry was actually a non-event for us and our customers, and that's due to the patch routines and all of these routines that we provide under the managed IT service that go over and above just any particular security product.
And a key one here is the offline backup. So that protects you against those insider threats. You know, you can't encrypt a backup that you can't access. If it's stored in a safe, if it's stored in a cloud vault, there's all sorts of ways to protect your backups, but that's critical in today's threat environment. And look, I realise we've gone a little bit over time. So look, we do have a special offer for attendees of today's webinar. So the Protect and Assure pack that covers the Cisco email security, it covers the umbrella package, and it covers the endpoint protection with the crypto guard. So that's available for $17 per user. So again, it's that enterprise grade security for a small business price. So that's a 10% saving over the standard pricing. And the other one we've got is a free offer for Umbrella. So this is really easy to deploy, really easy to set up. You can put it in your network, and there's no disruption, there's no negative effects. It's actually faster. Most people who see it, they go, "Wow, my web browsing is actually faster with this than it was previously." And you get immediate insight. You can see if there's malware hiding in the back of your network somewhere that you didn't realise was there. You know, someone might be sending credentials out over to a command and control system. It might just be waiting there for a command to say, "Hey, okay, run the encryption now." So it gives you that visibility of what's going on in your network. Okay, again, thank you for your time, and I know we've gone a little bit over time. We've got the health check. I encourage everyone, if you haven't got that already, to jump on our website or send me an email. My contact details are on the page there. And now are there any questions for us, Nigel?
Nothing in the chat room. No one's posted anything in the chat room. If anyone does want to ask a question, you can just come off mute and ask a question. If no one feels like asking a question, feel free, as Joel mentioned, send an email with any inquiry to Joel's address there.
Thank you very much.
We have recorded the presentation and the slide deck, and that'll be sent out afterwards. So we say don't click on emails, but you can click on them for us.